Ravens have soared high since that team could not have gotten off to a better start.
You'll be on this journey with me.
Hey guys, now joined inside Nats Park.
All right, Monday, October 30th, day after Ravens Cardinals live stream on deck. I'm Bobby Trossett. As always, this is where I bring you Baltimore sports and beyond. And you may notice this is a simulcast. Cole Jackson's Road Graders as well going live. So looking forward to bringing Cole on here and having a conversation about, yes, what we watched unfold in the desert yesterday. The Ravens take care of business, 6-2 through 8 weeks of football, but also being that we're closing in on 24 hours to the NFL's annual trade deadline, which is 4 p.m. Eastern on Halloween Day. We're going to have a number of things to talk about within that realm as well. So without further ado, let's bring him in north of the border. My guy, Cole Jackson, good to see you again, brother. And my promise to you is you will not have to essentially take over my channel solo due to Wi-Fi and connectivity issues that we had last month. That's my promise to you. Now, the good news is for me, if that happens for whatever reason, which is completely out of my control, I know you're going to be more than capable of spearheading it.
I got an interpretive dance planned. It's called the Victory Monday dance. So we're going to kick into that if it goes out. So I got you.
Oh, goodness gracious. Do want to say thank you to Lightos Vodka, a Baltimore-based, patent-pending, high-alkaline, gluten-free premium vodka with added electrolytes, today's sponsor. You can find a store near you via lightosvodka.com/find Lightos, or just ask your local liquor store. More information on that is included in the description of the show notes below. Your opening thoughts just on what you watched unfold yesterday in the desert. Here's where the Ravens sit, 6-2 overall. We all know that contrary to popular belief a couple weeks ago, this is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, most well-balanced divisions in all of football. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincy all sitting at 4-3. We all know the Bengals are going to be there, boy. They beat up on the San Francisco 49ers in the Bay Area yesterday. They're trending in the right direction. And as you noted here, 4-1 on the road, 2-1 in division, 6-2 overall, and now a little bit of home cooking before that Sunday night football battle with the Chargers. I believe that's on the West Coast, right? Because they got the Rams at home later this season, and they got the Chargers on the road. So anyway, what'd you make of what you watched unfold?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another typical game where they're playing against a lesser opponent, and they play down to their opponent. So it really depends on how you want to look at it. I've always been a big believer that you are what your record says you are, and this is a 6-2 football team. It's just crazy to think that a game against the Colts, a game against the Steelers are keeping them back from being 8-0. Those are a couple of mistakes away from being perfect through the first 8. Now, has it looked perfect? Are there still things that need to be addressed? Absolutely. But this is how you make the playoffs. And, half the battles making the playoffs. We saw the Ravens in 2019 be dominant, absolutely dominant through the regular season, and then get to the playoffs and it didn't matter. It's a new season when the playoffs come. What they need to be doing from now till, I'd say, December is just focusing on getting in. Get in, and then you got to get hot in December. And we know that as well as anyone, given what happened in 2012. I think they ended that season on like a 5-game losing streak, and then they heated up in January. So It really is a new season. So just get there. They're going to have challenges to address. They're going to continue to work out some of the kinks in the offense, some of the issues, things that I'm sure you and I are going to get into here. But all that matters right now is that they're winning games and that they are 6-2.
And they're winning in large part due to what number 8 is doing, statistically speaking. And speaking of that 2019 season, I get it. When you bring these stats up and you talk about 2019, and it's so easy to reference that year, I get it. Some people are like, stop. We don't want to hear it. Well, guess what? In some cases, you should want to hear it. And maybe through 8 weeks, or at least in this graphic, through 7 weeks of the season. And I know he didn't do anything yesterday that was eye-popping statistically in the box score or whatever, but just win, baby. And that's something that Lamar does consistently, season in, season out. Through 7 weeks, these look pretty impressive in terms of what he's done this year compared to what he did the previous 7 weeks in 2019, Cole. You have to at least acknowledge that before moving forward.
Yeah, and in a completely different offense, right? Like we're not seeing Lamar. There was a real lack of the QB run game yesterday specifically. They've trended away from it except in the red zone. That's really where we've seen those new zone reads that have been installed. It's really seeing that type of stuff in the red zone. Other than that, they're not using the QB run game like they were. So it's just a completely different look on the offense. And they're still working out some of those kinks. They're still trying to finish their installs. They're still trying to get things humming. A lot of guys miss time, both O-line and wide receivers through training camp through the first 8 weeks of the season. So they just got to get guys out there consistently. Obviously some adjustments they need to make in terms of play calling and things that you want to see there. But they're starting to make progress. You're starting to see things click.
You know what I really appreciate, and Sarah brought this up on our post-game show, and I'd be curious to get your perspective on this. Have you noticed that there's almost more wiggle room, more creative freedom in terms of media availability, transparency? And what I mean by that is it seems as if the guys feel a little bit more free to discuss, well, in one example last night, the play calling. Right?
Yeah.
Like Lamar gets up there and says, hey, why did we? Yeah, I don't know why we kind of got away from the run in the first half. Well, they certainly got back.
Blunt this year. That's the third or fourth time that I can think of where Lamar's kind of spoke his mind on, and it's not like, it's not bashing. It's just honestly how he feels, which I think is super positive. So, that's what I'm excited about. That's what you want to see from a leader, right? And so I think you're seeing Lamar Jackson, who took the helm of this team at 21 years old. He's just maturing. He's got to think of what were you and I like at 21? I definitely wasn't ready to lead anything. I did have a dog, but that's about it. I think that's just showing his maturity and taking the next step and leading this offense is just, the way I like to think about it is Lamar strikes me as the kind of guy where he's not going to say anything publicly that he hasn't already said to Todd. To his face. And you've seen Lamar get vocal on the sideline. So, it's not, to me, it's great to see. I want to see more of it. I want to see them adjusting to things because I completely agree on the run game thing. And we can get into it a little bit more deep if we want, but that was a huge missed opportunity for the offense yesterday.
Yeah, and luckily they got back to it in the second half. And Gus Bus, who's probably one of the more underappreciated players, I don't know about in the history of the Ravens, but in the Lamar era, if for whatever reason, maybe it's because of all the talk and the conversation surrounding JK, right? But Gus has been just Mr. Old Reliable, undrafted rookie who's developed. He's been rewarded for developing in Baltimore. And yesterday was one of those days for him where he's undeniable. He's just undeniable. 3 touchdowns. They had not had a 3 rushing touchdown game from a back since 2019, right, with Mark Ingram. We all remember that and how productive he was that year. But Gus Bus is just – I think about that one touchdown on the 2 or 3 yard line where he gets the ball, and maybe this is sort of your expertise here, but 2 guys are unblocked, right? Because there's kind of a void in the Ravens offensive line there. And what does Gus do? He's taking on both of these dudes and a relentlessness to get across the plane. He did it. And I just thought that was one of many examples yesterday where Gus put this team on his back and was running downhill ferociously. And it's great to see that for a guy who's got quite a few NFL miles on his tires.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's always been his biggest thing is the lack of hesitancy when he gets the ball. He just hits his gap. He hits it hard. He runs through contact. My biggest critique of him through the first few weeks was he wasn't breaking tackles. And since then he's been breaking a lot more, forcing missed tackles, a lot of that good stuff that we weren't seeing early. So it's good to see him get more comfortable. And, he's coming off a couple of years where he just hasn't played much football, right? So it took him a little time to get back into the mix. And now he looks like he's ready to do his thing, lead this team.
And just while we're on that conversation, because I know a lot of folks are wondering about the trade deadline. We're closing in on it and things of that nature. And we're going to go back and forth between recapping yesterday in Arizona while also diving into, what's hot right now. And Adam Schefter kind of got me churning earlier today, thinking that a lot of times leading up to these acquisitions for the Ravens, there has not been a whole lot of conversation. And you just see some of these deals pre-deadline over the last couple of years, most notably for the Ravens in 2022, Roquan Smith. And I think about the lack of conversation surrounding the potential of it being Roquan this time a year ago, Cole. And I also go back to the draft night 2 years ago when they dealt Marquise to Arizona. Both camps were extremely tight to the vest, right? Quiet. And you got to think that you can't expect it to happen every single year. But if it is going to happen, it's probably going to be one of those things that's completely unexpected, right? Like the Derrick Henry conversation, it's all about, everybody's been talking about this. There are conversations going on right now in terms of what Tennessee wants to do. According to Diana Rossini, teams have called their general manager. He was told the team, Diana was told the team is not moving on any offer unless it's exceptional. But then the follow-up here is that the Ravens are looking to add a running back. Jay Glazer from Fox Sports also said the Ravens are in the running back market. So it may not be Derrick Henry, right? The sexy name that everybody's throwing around. But what they're maybe telling you without telling you, especially with that Owen Wright call-up, that maybe they want to see what they have before making a move coming up within the next 24 hours.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, right? Like if you lose Gus, you're in trouble. You have change of pace backs, and that's not a position the Ravens want to be in. That's a position they've been in the last few years, and they had to go out and get Latavius Murray, Kenyon Drake, Freeman. Like it's
Mike Davis a couple years ago.
Mike Davis. Like the list is long of names that they had to go get to fill the void. And so the thing with Gus Edwards, like I said, I believe he's been trending up all year. I think he started a little slow, and then he's finally got his legs under him and he's starting to play significantly better. So on one hand, you could say, well, why would you go add when you have him doing that? Well, I mean, Gus has always operated in a committee going all the way back to when Lamar took over the team. I think it was him and Alex Collins in his UDFA year. And then, he worked with Mark Ingram. Then he worked with J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram, who was here. There was the three of them. So Gus has always worked in a committee, and he's always thrived in that role. So adding another back, I think, actually just makes Gus stronger. It limits his reps. It gives him stronger reps. He's not really a rhythm runner, in my opinion. He doesn't really need to, 4, 5, 6 carries to get it going. He's just an explosive back, no hesitancy, hits his gap. That's exactly what's made him successful. So adding another back to the mix makes sense to me because I'm really excited about Keaton Mitchell. I want to see him. We got that big electric play last week, but we've only seen him play one regular season snap, or not, maybe more than one snap. We've only seen him get one regular season touch. Very promising guy, but the fact that he's already injured and being an undersized guy makes me a little nervous. Yeah. Justice Hill, as your change of pace back, as your RB3 who's going to contribute on special teams, he's in a great role. If Gus gets hurt, you now have Justice Hill as your feature back, and that's not a great role for him. It's not something he's going to thrive in. So I think it's all about getting guys to be in a position to succeed, and adding another back just doesn't take anything away from Gus. It just adds to the room. So there's plenty of room here. Sneaky name would be Zach Moss, a guy that I don't know if Indy would trade him. Like, I don't really know what are they and what are they trying to do? They just paid Jonathan Taylor. Would you go add Zach, or would you go trade Zach Moss? I would think they would. They may want to go with a 1-2, but paying Jonathan Taylor all that money, if you can get a return on an asset, why would you not? So Zach Moss would be a guy that I think would fit really well here, fit really well in the identity they're trying to carve out in the run game, complement Gus really well. So that's one name that pops to me. If they don't go for the bigger name in Henry, Saquon, Jacobs, all these guys, they're saying they're unavailable,
Dalvin
but
Cook. Possibly.
Dalvin Cook's another guy. There's plenty of backs out there that they can add for pretty cheap, I would say.
Yeah. Terry Wiley checking in through the Facebook live chat reminds everybody that Melvin Gordon is on the practice squad, so we still have a safety net. But the important note here, designation-wise, is that they're out of practice squad game day elevations or activations, if you will, for him. So that's just something that they have to take into account here moving forward. So, yeah, you do have a stable, if you will. But to Cole's point, if Gus Bus goes down, knock on wood, certainly knock on wood. But if that's the case, then you're in trouble. Are you really going to be able to, without Gus, who's you're right, he's such a compliment to their committee approach. Without him, are you going to be able to have success in the backfield from a committee standpoint? There's some question marks related to that. And in terms of Gus Bus post-game, Jonas Schaefer caught up with him. He was asked about the Ravens trade speculation at the position. I was loving this. Gus is such a no bullshit guy. It's so good. He goes, I don't know nothing about that. And of course, remember, this is just the numbers: 19 carries, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just another day in the office for Gus, who played it very business-like afterwards. But just before we move on from running back, I think we both agree the Ravens are putting feelers out there based on these reports, based on some of their game day activations and Owen Wright and Keaton Mitchell and things of this nature, that they clearly think that in a way they can upgrade at this position. Do you think they need to? The word need. Are you on the need train at running back?
No, I'm not, because this is one of those situations where you need someone to get hurt for it to turn into a need. And so, I mean, you can make that argument about a lot of positions, but I feel more confident with some of, like, if, I mean, Owe went down and they had Clowney and KVN to back up, if then you get into, well, what if you lose 2 guys? But I mean, you can do that at any position and on any team in the NFL and they're screwed, right? So you can't be, injury 2 or 3 guys proof at every single position. So, I do think it's more of a need, but I also think there's a sense of luxury to it. I guess where my argument would be is that upgrading at running back is going to be cheaper than upgrading for an injury backfill, if you will, at corner or edge or D-line. Yeah. Those guys are just at more expensive positions in terms of acquiring them via draft capital. So that's where the argument comes from me, where I see this as a value add. I think they're going to get a couple comp picks for losing some of their free agents. So, I mean, they're going to get a couple picks back if they end up losing a mid-round pick. This fan base, in my opinion, and I'm like this a lot too, is we're obsessed with draft picks. We're coming from the Ozzie Newsome era of literally leading the league and getting comp picks and having, going into every draft class with 9 to 10 picks. I mean, 2 years ago we had 14. And we didn't do any trades to move up. It was just, we made all those picks. So that's where, I don't mind doing something like what they did last year with a Roquan Smith, and they could do that at edge. Maybe they go crazy and they go get, Hunter or something like that and then extend them. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I just think the draft capital you'll have to pay for a running back that's going to come in and make a mark will be less than at other positions that also you could be one injury away from needing, right? So that's the argument for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's well said, and just makes me think about, just in terms of the potential upgrade at pass rusher, how many dividends that can pay for you, knowing what we watched unfold the second half of last year with Justin Houston. The guy was sipping from the fountain of youth the first half, and then unfortunately for him, whether it was just workload or where he is in his career, he's logged a lot of NFL miles, hit that wall, and then really fell off a cliff production-wise, at least statistically speaking, in the second half of last year. And while you hope that's not the case for a Jadeveon Clowney and a Kyle Van Noy, both of these dudes are on the other side of 30. It begs the question in terms of whether or not that could be a similar mirrored type of situation down the stretch. So who knows? I mean, Kirk Cousins, right? We know tore his, in all likelihood, as torn his Achilles, which ends his season. And unless he's on some sort of ridiculous timeline like Aaron Rodgers is doing right now, he ain't coming back this year. Perhaps that they end up becoming sellers within the next 24 hours or so, given that gut punch that Minnesota just got dealt yesterday. Now, just in terms of what the Ravens have at their disposal, Brian McFarland from Ravens Salary Cap, also Russell Street Report, noted a few things last week, and I had him on the show, and he's just, you and I both know this, he's as good as it gets.
The GOAT.
This is his time of year, too. So keep in mind, the Ravens presently have 8 picks in the next April's draft. You kind of just alluded to this, just in terms of it's not the double-digit category that EDC probably would want, but they do have their own first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and 7th round picks. They also have the Jets 7th for Chuck Clark. We remember that back in March, and they're expecting a 4th round compensatory pick because of losing Ben Powers in free agency, who priced himself out of Baltimore and ended up in Denver. Where would you rather be right now? Good for him, but gosh, where would you? Although it was a week-to-week league yesterday.
There it is. It was. There you can see it. Look how quickly, a giant can fall. And this league is crazy. A lot of survivor pools got busted yesterday, I'm sure. Never, if you guys are doing survivor picks, never pick divisional matchups. I'm telling you, avoid those.
Oh, as soon as I saw the statistic that I don't know if it was CBS or some other network put up in terms of what the Chiefs are and aren't with and without Taylor in attendance, it's just like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
I love it. I love T Swizzy.
She's super talented. She's super talented. The Ravens currently have $2.8 million in cap space. By the way, Travis is apparently endorsing Accelerator, and this guy that's working for my like just on the back end for me with brand deals and whatnot got this stuff sent to me. Accelerator. I don't know why I'm giving them free advertising right now, Cole, but I'm addicted to this stuff right now. I don't know if it's just because it's in the middle of the season and
They don't sell that in Canada.
Really?
Yeah, man. I'm telling you.
What the hell do you drink up there for energy?
Do you guys have Prime?
I'm sure we do.
Yeah,
I'm a big energy drink guy, but when it's sent to me for free, I drink it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, hey, is this on Road Graders? Go ahead, send me a case.
That's right. Hey, exactly. Cross promotions going on here right now. I'll put you in some touch with people that can get that done. But over 400 people joining us on the day after live stream right now. We're glad you're here. This is a simulcast, a joint simulcast on Road Graders with Cole Jackson and also across the Bobby Baltimore channels on YouTube and Facebook. More into the pre-deadline talk here, things to keep in mind moving forward. The Ravens currently have $2.8 million in cap space, as Brian notes. That increases weekly by $330,000 each week. The Tyus Bowser, don't get me going on that story. Nick Moore and Andrew Voorhees stay on the non-football injury list. They can create $13 million via simple restructures. I believe those are guys like Ronnie Stanley, Mark Andrews, right, Marlon, like those types of lucrative
even
contracts.
Lamar, I think they can restructure.
Okay, right. And then more if they were to add void years that Brian asks or just mentions here. So just from an overall monetary side, that's what they're dealing with. Keep in mind also the Ravens have a very tight cap in 24 and a lot of key free agents who continue to cha-ching that bell, right? Ring that bell, as Jeff Zrebiec notes with Justin Madubuike all the time, the way he's playing. PQ, OBJ, Zeitler, Stone, and then a potential trade acquisition. I mean, the bottom line is all these names probably aren't going to be back in Baltimore guaranteed in 2024. You got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they got some big decisions to make. And that's why some of these guys, specifically at the running back position that are rentals that will be a little bit cheaper due to the fact that they don't have future years. Not only are you not having to pay them long-term, so you can afford potentially some of these longer-term contracts that you might look at, maybe a Queen, maybe a Madubuike. But you're also, if they sign somewhere else, you get their comp pick, right? So that's got to factor into giving up draft capital. Yes, it's delayed. Obviously, it won't be till the future draft, but nonetheless, it's still a pick coming back your way that you can work into a rental scenario.
Yeah. You can't talk about just what this team has been right now as we sort of transition back to what we watched unfold and specifically what they've done defensively. I know it wasn't the best. We just finished up, by the way, it's been a busy morning, Cole. We just finished up with Roquan, our weekly chat with him, which will be coming up in the next couple hours. And he was abundantly clear that yesterday's performance, defensively speaking, was not up to their standard. He and Marlon made that very clear based on what I saw from some of the beat reporters' tweets in the post-game locker room sessions. And quite frankly, yeah, they came out a little flat, to be honest with you. Yet, as Aaron Schatz puts forth here, the Ravens have now opened up a lead of over 10% on the rest of the league in terms of DVOA. This is like talking about defensive production, performance, adjusted value. They have the best DVOA ever for a 6-2 team. Given how this season has gone, this probably means they will lose next week, as Aaron writes. So hopefully not. But Seattle is a stiff test, no question, coming into town next week. But you can't talk about the defense, Cole, without talking about this guy. And I wanted to pull this up from April of 2020. Remember, Geno was a 7th-round pick out of Iowa. Jeff has an incredible piece on The Athletic that features and profiles Geno and his beginnings in Western Pennsylvania as a standout football player. As his high school coach told Jeff, if you're looking for the football, just go find Geno. Or if you're looking for Geno, just go find the football. I can't remember. But anyway, Geno tweeted this: only thing I needed was a chance. Baltimore, you're going to get everything from me and more. And guess what? Through 8 weeks, they're getting all that and more. His 5 interceptions are tied with the great Ed Reed back in 2007 for the most by a Ravens player in the team's first 8 games of a season in team history. And I think to kind of tailor this back to the conversation surrounding, the deadline and what some of the issues we thought were in the secondary just a couple months ago. Wow. The fact that he's been able to step in admirably now, back-to-back seasons for Marcus Williams, and there really not be a drop-off. You talk about cha-ching. This guy's value is going through the roof, Cole.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, another guy that's likely pricing himself out of here. But also you get you're getting the dividend of you developed him, and now you're going to get the comp pick when he probably ends up signing somewhere else. But this is just such a Ravens thing, a Ravens defender balling out in a contract year and then getting some big money elsewhere. It's a big testament to their drafting and their developing on defense. It's been, a marquee signature of this franchise since they came to Baltimore in 96. It's nonstop. So, it's great to see, and super happy for Geno. Would love to keep him around here, but I just don't know how they're going to do it with the cap crunch. But he's been so fun to watch this year. Just one of those players that puts themselves in the right positions, and that was one thing. I'm not going to, I keep making the joke on Twitter that, he should switch to number 20 just because I like to bug people when they take it too seriously. But it is one of those things. That's what Ed did so well. How many times did he have an interception off a tip player, an overthrow just for being in the right position? It's that high football IQ that's got Geno to this spot. So huge credit to him. He's been a blast to watch. And it's going to really stink when they do lose him.
It's probably the same people that got all pissed off about the comparisons between Rowe and Ray. It's
Probably.
like, look, we get it. Roquan's just getting started in terms of what Ray's career ended up being, how long it was, and how fruitful and championship-esque it was, right? But to me, the way that he handles himself, the way he conducts himself, and then goes and backs it up is the true undisputed leader of this team. The way that he finds any kind of bulletin board material or creates his own bulletin board material, but then goes and backs it up. Like that to me is the Ray.
He plays with a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
He's got a chip on his shoulder every week. There's nothing. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that, he spent time this offseason with Ray. He probably picked things like that up. Doesn't mean, Ray's the greatest to ever do it. So, it doesn't mean that's who he is. He's Roquan Smith, but he's still a damn good football player, and I'm glad he's a Raven.
And yes, as Justin Davis, one of my Facebook follower, points out, yes, this is Mark Andrews' long-lost cousin north of the border up there in Canada. Mark, thank you for popping on the show today.
One of these days, I'm going to get Mark on the show, and I'm going to get him to acknowledge that, unfortunately, he looks like me, and it's going to be a great day for all of us.
I think we can – I need to set you up with one contact that I think can make that happen because – it needs to happen.
Mark followed me on Facebook last year or on Twitter, and I was like, don't message him. And I haven't. I wanted to, but I haven't done it. Couldn't do it.
I love it. I love Mark, and I love that you're absolutely going to message him at some point. I'm going to start peer pressuring you to do that. Absolutely. One more note on the secondary, because I think that Marlon Humphrey has drawn some criticism since coming back from his foot procedure that he underwent back in August, which was very random, kind of bizarre, a little vague, little out of nowhere, but he did undergo it and then missed the first chunk of this season. And since then, it seems as if he's trying to get his legs back from underneath him. I know that some folks were all over him for the DPI on Marquise Brown right in that opening quarter. I think it was the opening quarter, or at least in the first half on Sunday in Arizona. First drive. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Because it extended it. Right. And then you had the Kyle Hamilton weird illegal contact. That was bizarre.
Complete BS.
That was like,
for folks that are wondering, because I was pretty animated about that one. So if you read the rule of illegal contact outside of 5 yards, it says beyond the 5 yard zone, if the player who receives the snap remains in the pocket with the ball, the quarterback, a defender cannot initiate contact with the receiver who is attempting to evade him. That is the key piece. So that means that once he's beyond 5 yards, if Trey McBride was trying to run a route, then he cannot interfere with him. That is illegal contact. McBride runs right into Kyle Hamilton's hip and then pushes off of him. So he wasn't trying to evade him. He was trying to initiate contact. Wasn't illegal contact. Absolute crap.
Extends the drive, ends up leading to the Ravens' first touchdown allowed on an opening drive, defensively speaking, in 16 games. Hadn't done it this year, hadn't done it in the last 16 games previously. So yeah, it just, you say the Ravens defense came out flat, and then you're also like, well, you eliminate that and they're going 3 and out, right? Wouldn't it have been 3 and out if not for that?
They might have had a first. I think they had a first and then that happened, but I could be wrong. Anyway. It was 4:00. I was trying to get pizza in the house. It was chaos yesterday. My house turned into a war zone with the girls and trying to watch the game.
Yeah, you got a couple little ones, and Sarah and I were talking about that too. Like, you get into such a routine when it's 1:00 for the first 2 months of the season, excluding the London game, and then you throw a 4:25 in there. Just wait for these freaking primetime games coming. The next day after primetime games I'm not complaining, but they are so brutal. Like, you just don't sleep when you do what we do. But hey, that's the name of the game.
You're up till 2 or 3 doing content, tweeting every single time without
easy.
Yeah.
The Marlon conversation, though, just to wrap that up, what have you seen from him? Do you think that he's kind of trying to catch his body up to football speed at this point, or?
Yeah, no, great question. I think Marlowe's looked pretty good. I was surprised at how fast he came back. He got back quick, and he's had a couple lumps here and there. Yesterday was probably one of his tougher days. But if you look at the numbers, he was only charted with 1 allowed catch for 9 yards. So I mean, it wasn't like he's getting thrown at out there. They're trying to avoid him. It's just one of those things where it's going to take a little bit for his legs to get under him. We've seen it with pretty much every player that's come back from injury. It takes a few games to truly get your feet back. And so, but in that context, I think Marlowe's actually been pretty darn good. He played really well against Tennessee. He played really, really well against Detroit. So, there's 2 games where I thought he looked really solid. Even his first game against Pittsburgh, if it wasn't for, he had that catch he allowed against Pickens, and that was pretty much the only highlight that's been against him this year. So, I'm not overly concerned about anything. I think, eventually we're going to want to see him as kind of one of the leaders of the defense, one of the higher paid players. We're going to want to see him take a couple steps, make some plays. He only has 1 PBU, no interceptions, no forced fumbles through just 4 games back. So eventually we're going to want to see that playmaker that he has in him, step out and come to fruition. But, in terms of his coverage skills, his movement skills, I think he's starting to look himself again, which is great.
Unfortunately for him, Pickens has had his numbers over the years, which I'm sure he's not forgotten about. Yep. And then specifically speaking to the play that's just everybody's talking about, rather than the full 4-quarter, collective sample size for Marlon yesterday is the DPI. I mean, Marquise had him beat. Let's give Hollywood his flowers there. And it was a clear DPI there in the opening drive. Marquise, by the way, if you just want to talk about the former Ravens, 6 receptions, 33 yards. He did score a touchdown on a beautiful ball thrown in there by, I think Hamilton was in the coverage there, but it was an awesome throw there by Joshua Dobbs, who I don't know what's going on with Kyler Murray. The dude's clear, and yet maybe not comfortability-wise. He's not ready to get back in there. They have not had him all season long. Kind of feels like it's similar in a sense to what's going on with Tyus Bowser. He's clear. Like, he is medically cleared as far as I know, and yet the messaging surrounding his status and his availability has been nothing short of mixed in terms of mixed messaging. But I
don't know if Kyler's the one deciding not to play, because it sure sounds like it's Tyus Bowser that doesn't want to play or try. I don't know. I can't figure that one out. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
It is really weird, but you know what isn't weird is when you, and don't get me wrong, Harbs has been tight-lipped ever since several years ago when he kind of, during the injury-riddled season, maybe spoke too much or shared too much information, which is always coming from a good place. But you can sometimes bury yourself months after if timelines don't work out or there's setbacks, right? I mean, you really have to be careful when you share this information. It's obviously the media's job to get as much information out of you as possible. But with the Tyus situation, I've really noticed within the last couple of weeks, at this point, he's making it clear it is in Tyus's court. And yet Tyus is getting on his show with Glenn Clark and Rita and saying, hey, if I feel good. I feel like I'm in a good place. Well, what's going on here? You're not.
That's where I
paid.
took the issue. It's like, well, if you feel good, why aren't you? I don't know. And it's like, I get to the point where we're so many weeks in, and there doesn't really look to be an end in sight. And I want Tyus Bowser out there. That's where.
Yes.
So I got nothing against Tyus Bowser. I love him as a football player. I want him on my team contributing. So it's not like I'm trying to sit here and be negative towards him. If it's simple as he doesn't feel healthy and it's his choice, just say that. I don't have an issue with that. I think players. We're seeing a huge movement towards players taking a lot more control over their own health. And I think that's important, especially when it comes to head injuries. So, if that's simply what it is, then that's fine with me. It's just, I like, it just doesn't make sense. And this happened with J.K. Dobbins. This happened with Ronnie Stanley, where, Harb started to turn it and be like, take it up with them. And that's where it's like, is this another situation where the player's choosing not to play? J.K. Dobbins had his little mini holdout over his contract this offseason, and that's what Harbaugh kept saying. When he's ready to play, we'll be here to coach him. And, you'll have to take that up with him. That's what he kept saying. He said that about Ronnie, too, the year before when he was working his way back from injury. So, you'd get a video of Ronnie Stanley walking up a sand dune, but then he isn't even practicing. And it's like, again, I'm not here to I'm not trying to be negative towards these players. It's not that at all. It's just, are you playing or are you not? Like, we're paying you a lot of money. As a fan, that's how I feel. It is what it is. But if it's one of those situations where they're not, confident to play, then just say that. Like, it's, if you tell me it's not, I'm pretty reasonable fan as it is. So, that's really how I view the situation. It's just been strange.
When you listen to John Harbaugh and catch up on and pick up on his body language, his tone, the way that he handles press conferences as much as we do as content creators, when he feels a certain type of way. And I am led to believe that he is not pleased with where things are at right now with Tyus.
See, and someone in the comments just said, I do not speak for hurt players. You don't know how they feel. I agree with you, but then to go on a show with Glenn Clark and be like, I feel good, I'm feeling like that, then don't say that if that's not how you feel. That's where I don't get that. Like, that's where the disconnect seems to be. He's saying he feels good, but then he's not practicing. So what's the disconnect? Right. What is the truth? So it's not that I'm trying to speak for anyone. That's not it at all. That's completely changing the narrative. It's I'm going off the words he's saying in the media.
And there was, that came right after Harbs was essentially like you heard Tyus expressing optimism, but the day prior or the 2 days prior, Harbs is up there like, this is really up to Tyus's decision. I really want what's best for him, acting as if he's got a big decision to make, leading us to believe that perhaps it's a decision that requires like him to be shut down for the year. But then for that to take a complete 180. So it's, again, you hate to harp on it because there's other things that are more important right now, but they could use another body in there, a very capable body at outside linebacker from a pass rusher standpoint, especially like we mentioned a little while earlier on. Like, is this Kyle Van Noy, Jadeveon Clowney duo, even though Odafe Owe is back and he's been very disruptive, although how does he not wrap up Dobbs yesterday? He does it all, dude. He gets through it. He knifes through it. He shows you his explosive speed, and yet he can't get Dobbs down. It's like, come on, man, finish the play.
Yeah.
And then Clowney, what are we doing here? Why are you thinking scoop and score? You could put this game away if you just fall in the friggin' football. I just asked Roquan like an hour ago when we were taping. And by the way, that, like I said earlier, just in case you guys are popping on now, I saw some people in the comment section asking when that conversation's coming up. Within the next couple hours after Cole and I finish here, I'll start the editing process and have that available for you across the Vault platforms with Roquan. But Rowe was just like, he didn't see the offensive lineman behind him, and he was just thinking like, hey, instincts-wise, let me pick this thing up and bring it to the house, where I'm thinking like more situational.
Happened against the Colts. Who do we just cut? 48 edge player.
Jeremiah Moon.
Jeremiah Moon had that ball and again, it looked like he had some daylight ahead of him, so he went for the scoop instead of hopping on it. And as he did, it was Quentin Nelson came flying in and knocked the ball out again. So, it is one of those things where you just got to get on the ball. Just get the ball. Let the offense take care of the yards.
We're nearly 40 minutes into the stream, and we haven't gotten to your bread and butter. So let's do that now. And when we do, we got to give some big love to number 70 and his wife, the missus, Sarah Zeitler, made sure to do that as well. Gave you a little bit of love for the graphic. And Kevin Zeitler, officially beaten all 32 teams in the NFL. Just the 17th player to do so. Proud doesn't even begin to describe it, Sarah says. And as you know, Cole, Kevin is about as all business as it gets. I can remember a couple of years ago when she was getting ready to give birth, or at least they were in one of their checkup appointments at the hospital. He's over there doing pass blocking sets.
He should be.
As he should. I knew you'd say something like that. Ravens graphic on the left-hand side. Obviously, you need to be around the league for a while in order to accomplish this. You need to have played for at least, obviously, one other team, multiple teams, and Kevin has done exactly that. And I tell you what, he's been durable, he's been available, he's been consistent, and I think he's been one of those underrated free agent acquisitions for this team in the last few years that probably should be talked about more than it is.
Oh, absolutely. And he had a rough patch to start the season. I think he had 7 allowed pressures in the first 3 weeks, which was he was kind of that, and he always has been in his career. He's that kind of stabilizing pass blocking force. One of the best pass blocking guards in the NFL. And he struggled out the gates, and then he's really settled in. He allowed 0 pressures yesterday. Only 2 against Detroit, 0 against Tennessee. So, only 2 allowed in the last 3 weeks. So he's really bounced back in a serious way. It's why you don't want to come out too hard on some of the vets. Sometimes it just takes a little bit to get their legs under them. He's up there in age. He's like 34 this year. So, he's just, he's getting older, but he's starting to show that veteran stabilizing presence. And he's just been an absolute stud for this team, with the struggles they had at guard after Marshall Yonda left, to have him come in, after that disastrous 2021 season, or no, that was 2020, and then brought him in 2021 to try and stabilize the offensive guard position, and he definitely has. He's just been so solid. Great family too. Him and Sarah are the best.
Oh, they're awesome. I love the way that she sort of like features him on her social media because he's so dry, he's so businesslike, and she seems like this ball of energy. They have a great young family, and yeah, to your point, Kevin turns 34 this upcoming March, and he was a former first-round pick back in 2012 by the Cincinnati Bengals, the 27th overall selection. So a very successful career, hopefully continues for Kevin. Congratulations to him. And just along the lines of, again, your bread and butter, you tweeted out the pressures allowed within the last hour or so by the Ravens offensive line, according to PFF yesterday in Arizona. Ronnie Stanley allowed 4. Moses and Simpson with 1. And by the way, some of you were asking on the post-game stream what happened to Morgan Moses. It was simply based on what John Harbaugh had to say. Hey, we feel like we have a starting caliber tackle who's just kind of chilling when we're at full strength, and Patrick McCary, and we wanted to give him some runs. So there was nothing wrong with Morgan in terms of availability or injury-wise, so that's good news for them. But each of those guys had a pressure, Moses and John Simpson, and then Kevin Zeitler and Tyler Linderbaum with a goose egg. 0, zilch, nada, clean game. What'd you think overall from the line?
It felt, and I tweeted at the time because it felt bad. It didn't look good. It felt bad, the film hasn't come out yet for me. I should probably have it here within the next hour. I'll start going through it to get my thoughts together. But what I'm expecting to see was very similar to last week. And I did a video on it because people kept saying, Detroit was getting pressure. And I was like, that pressure ain't coming from the O-line. And so, it's one of those things. Everyone uses a different time measurement. Some use 3 seconds, some use 3.25 seconds for how long the offensive line needs to hold up before the pressure's not on them. Essentially, if you can form a pocket consistently for 3 seconds, you're going to be giving your quarterback enough time for the ball to get out. And so the issue last week against the Lions wasn't the O-line. It was mostly just guys weren't open. Lamar had to improvise. Lamar placed the ball. Last week, Lamar had the best game of ball placement I've seen him have as a Raven. He was just absolutely throwing dots over guys' heads, like just perfectly placed balls. But sometimes it took a little bit to develop. Sometimes a guy had to run into a secondary route to get open. So I'm expecting to see a little bit of that yesterday too. Just, the ball was getting held, and just because the ball is held doesn't necessarily mean it's quarterback's fault. I think guys just weren't getting open again, and that's been a bit of an issue. Something that we saw Kurt Warner talk about a lot, put a little video out. I think people were really hard on Kurt Warner. I think took it as some sort of slanderous content. It's funny because a couple of the film guys that do they cover the Ravens, myself, Coach Evans, Spenny, we were all kind of like, no, yeah, he's kind of onto something. Guys aren't really open. It's mostly, they're coming back to the ball and Lamar's getting the ball out. There was a lot of that happening. It doesn't mean it's happening every snap. So I'm expecting to see a little bit of that when I go back through the film. But overall, I think the O-line's gelling a little bit. I'm a little worried about, it's just been a roller coaster for Ronnie. He's up and down. He's all over the place. 1 week you think, okay, well, maybe he's getting comfortable out there. And then yesterday it was weird though, because I swear to God, he didn't have the right cleats on, because a lot of his losses came off slips.
Did you see the one where he let the guy go right through into Lamar?
Yeah. And his left foot gave out on him, and it didn't look like a footwork issue. It looked like he slipped.
To his credit, though, there were a lot of those outside of him. Like, dude,
that field looked
all
like
over
trash.
the field.
Yeah. It was very, very, very strange. So I'm just, I don't want, again, I just said it, like, you can't just give up on some of these vets. You got to give them time to figure it out. But I do think the O-line's gelling a little bit. I think a lot of it's, especially the interior has been much, much better. Once Linderbaum came back, it started to look really, really good inside. Kevin stepped up his play. So for me, I think the next step is just building the consistency with the tackles, and hopefully seeing Ronnie get back to his his healthy spot where he's comfortable.
What do you think about Jeremiah's comment here on Road Graders? Patrick McCary is too good to sit, but I still believe the best 5 is with him at left guard instead of John Simpson. What are your thoughts?
I think he's a better football player than John Simpson. John Simpson has been quietly not that good. Nothing seems to happen, but he does lose a lot of reps. It's very typical to last year. They have the left guard and center working together a lot of the time, as they're trying to help out their left guard. They did a lot last year with Powers. Now they're doing it with Simpson. They're asking Linderbaum to take on more responsibility again in the pass block game. They didn't do that as much when Mustafa was in. A lot of double teams between the left guard and the center. But I do think McCary is a better football player.
What can't he do?
He can't run block from the guard position. That's where I'm concerned about him. He lacks the power in the run block game, and that's why I think they haven't put him back at guard after being there earlier in his career. Okay. He struggled there at center too. It was never his pass block. He's been a great pass blocker no matter where he's been in the line. But getting push in the run game from your guards is essential, and that's just not his strength. It's not his strength as a football player, and it's not something he's good at tackle either, but he's such a good pass blocker, and that's what you need out of your tackles. So I do think McCary is a better football player than Simpson. I'm not sure he's a better offensive guard than Simpson due to the run blocking concerns.
Fair. Just dropped into the live chat the access link if you want to join the show. We'll take some guests before we wrap up in the next 15 minutes or so. Thanks to Jeremiah. And before we do bring in our first guest, Cole, is Tyler Linderbaum off to a Pro Bowl caliber year? I mean, what have you seen from him? Given the whole high ankle sprain or I don't know if it was high. Was it low or high? Did he deal with a high ankle sprain?
I think it was a high, but I'm telling you, that kid wakes up and he eats glass for breakfast. Like, he doesn't. There's absolutely zero shits given from Tyler Linderbaum. He's been such a good player this year. Like, I don't think people truly realize. He's allowed just 6 pressures in the games he's played. Against Houston, he allowed 2. Then it's just been 1 against pretty much every opponent until yesterday, 0. Given that people thought that was his big concern, he wasn't being graded as a good pass blocker last year. He's a top 5 pass blocker in the league this year based on PFF's metrics. And it passes the film test. I think what we're seeing where we're not getting that next step is this team has struggled to run zone consistently, and that's where you really unlock Tyler Linderbaum's eliteness. That's where he's going to stand out from a very good center to a elite center. So I think if they can finally get the zone run game going, remember what Tyler Linderbaum did in that Tampa game last year, absolutely destroying linebackers, Devin White in space. And we've seen it this year on some of the highlights. Like, when he gets out in space, he's taking guys and he's sending them home. But they're just not able to consistently run that due to the rest of the line. So I think that's where we're missing that piece where Tyler Linderbaum is going to take that next step. But in terms of the rest of the league, he's been a top center in the game. No doubt about it. All
right. We'll get to, so much for, potentially regretting trading Marquise Brown and honoring that request, right? Because they went and used that and to go and get their future center, and that is Tyler Linderbaum. And by the way, I get it. Marquise, he had his reasons for requesting that trade a couple years ago, right? And some of them were valid. But you can't tell me 2 years later this dude doesn't have a little bit of regret. I know he got paid. I know he's more involved out there in the desert. But if you're playing the game, and obviously these guys have families to feed and money to make, but if you're playing to win and also make money, then wouldn't you have just kind of grinded through another year or two with Greg Roman and just tried to live to see another day, knowing that maybe at some point you were going to see a different schematic change? I mean, tough to see where he's at right now in terms of two different teams going in completely different directions.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one of those things, guys leave for the money, right? So, that was always the reason. Even if it wasn't said, that's where he thought he was going to get paid. So I can't say anything negative about that. Go get your money. Do what you got to do.
Do want to make sure to shout out and thank two of my returning patrons. These guys are supporting everything I'm building here inside the channel through Patreon this month. So Amy Green and Toey Faria, I appreciate both of you for believing in what I'm building. If you're interested in doing the same, visit patreon.com/Bobby Trossett. We got a few more questions that are coming in through the live chat. Again, I just dropped the link in there if you want to join the show, FaceTime in for a little bit. But Justin Davis via Facebook says, how do y'all feel about Dalvin Cook in the addition possibly in our offense? He's with the Jets. Doesn't have as much of a role, I'm sure, as he would like. Could you see it in Baltimore?
I don't see the big difference between him and Melvin Gordon at this point in their careers. What's he going to bring that Gordon can't bring you? That being said, it would be super cheap. Like, we're talking 6th, 7th rounder pick swap type move. You give a 6, you get back a 7th. So if they just want to add some insurance in addition to Gordon, and then if essentially what you'd be in is the approach you had to do the last couple of years where you have two vets, running the rock for you with your younger guys. When Dobbins and Gus were gone, year 1, they had Freeman and Murray. Year 2, they had Mike Davis until JK got back. So that would be the reason you do that, is to kind of get a committee approach going with a couple guys. So in terms of getting Dalvin Cook's he's just washed. Like, he hasn't looked the same the last 2 years. Melvin Gordon, when he played for the Ravens in a limited role, he was actually pretty good. I was pretty impressed with what he did. So maybe he comes in and, in a good offense, he's rejuvenated a little bit. But, I think he's a little redundant to what you have in Melvin Gordon. So, on one hand, it's cheap. On the other hand, I think it's just what you have on your practice squad. So why make the move?
Let's open up the guest lines here inside Road Graders and the Bobby Baltimore joint simulcast here. Again, we've got over 550 of you joining us here concurrently, which is cool. A little day after Ravens Cardinals live stream. We are talking about the trade deadline coming up in the next 24 hours as well. So if you want to pop on and FaceTime in, like we're about to get Brian on here in a second, you can do so by going to the live chat or the show notes, clicking that link, turning your camera on, and popping on. So, all right, Brian, let us know where you're tuning in from today and one thing you want to talk about.
Hey, I'm tuning in for Baltimore today. Just want to shout out Cole Jackson, the GOAT. Nobody better at breaking down the trenches.
What up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good, man. Good.
Every Monday, always good. I just want to say that I would so much rather see a trade for a depth pass rusher than a running back. Like Cole said, it takes an injury at running back for it to be a need. Whereas like the pass rush, 2 out of your 3 productive players are 30 plus, and we've seen what happens with Justin Houston, JPP. They just fall off a cliff, and like the production just goes down. I'd love to see it Daniil Hunter or Brian Burns. Seems kind of unrealistic cap wise, but honestly, a depth guy I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, the Ravens have pretty much moneyballed the position, right? They're paying KVN and Jadeveon Clowney $3.8 million on the cap, and you're getting the production that you're getting out of them. So their ability to bring in a variety of guys that I think the important part about those two players is they fit what Mike McDonald. Sorry, I almost said Wink. They fit what Mike McDonald wants to do on defense, and they're penetrators. They're guys that can win one-on-one pass rushes. So when you're using that in a sim pressure framework, it works really well. So if they can go out and get a guy a little bit cheaper to just add to the mix, it gives them a little bit of a reinforcement. Maybe a guy that, one role that they do have a bit of a need for is kind of the Calais Campbell type that, can play the 5-tech, slide inside, play outside. So, if they could go out and get a bigger physical type guy, I mean, what are the Falcons up to? What are they doing with Calais Campbell? Does he want to come back home for the rest of the year? That type of spot, I think would be, that's definitely something that you can make a strong argument that that's a need and they could go out and do that. So, if they're adding someone that can add to, what they want to do in the sim pressure framework, I think it makes a ton of sense.
Appreciate you, Brian. Thanks for the call, brother. If you guys are interested in doing as well, the guest lines are popping right now. So let's keep it going. Zone 16, you're on deck. Let us know where you're tuning in from. One thing you want to talk about here on this joint simulcast on a Victory Monday. What's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, man? Wonderful name, Bobby Baltimore, man. I'm calling straight from Baltimore, Maryland, man. Zone 16, 21216 out here, man. West Baltimore.
Hey, that's a dope mic right there. You sound good.
Yeah,
You gotta call in more often, man.
I will, man. I will. I need to keep track of your schedule a little more, and I'm going to drop in more often, man. I really do appreciate you bringing me on. Hey, absolutely. We want to talk right there. As everybody's out here saying running back trade and things of that nature, but they made a wonderful announcement about Gus Edwards, the bus, his accolades on Sunday. They said he's the third leading rusher ever in Ravens history. So my question to you, Bobby Baltimore, my question to you, Cole, is why aren't the Ravens feeding the bus more? What is going on? What is taking them so long to make Gus Edwards a 3-down guy? Come on.
You know what? And to your point, to that 3-down piece, I think something that's even added to that, he's been a really good pass protector. He's been pretty good out of the backfield. He had that 80-yard catch, which came off of – that wasn't a design play. That was just a heads-up play by Gus to create an outlet for Lamar and then take it for 80. So I thought in the pass game he's been really good. So here's what I would say. This is what I have no knowledge about this. I have no inside information. Just me.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I might know a thing or two. The Ravens, I think, are worried about his durability long-term in the context of the knee injury he suffered. I think they've been trying to manage his snaps a little bit. Now, he did run the rock 19 times yesterday. That's getting into feature back territory. 14 the week before, 16 against the Titans. So, I mean, he is getting up there in terms of feature back carries. And what are we seeing from him? He's getting better, more productive, making plays. So, I do think I would much rather see heavy Gus Edwards with a little mix of Keaton Mitchell when he's healthy than, more Justice Hill, if that makes sense. I don't mind seeing Justice out there every now and then, but I would much rather them, try and establish an identity with Gus as their lead back, if that's what they're going to rock with. I just worry that they're concerned about that knee. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering my question, man. I appreciate you guys for letting me tune in today, man.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for popping on the show, my man. And to your point, Gus has been extremely productive throughout his career in Baltimore. And here are the numbers once more: 19 for 80 yards on Sunday in the desert. And like I mentioned earlier on in the stream, Gus is the first Ravens player with 3 rushing touchdowns in a game since Mark Ingram did so during the 2019 campaign. A few more calls. They are popping on right now. Thor and Derek, if you can turn on those cameras, we can get you involved. But MBK, we're coming to you next. Let's see what your mic's like compared to Zone 16. That was a pretty dope setup.
It was. I
kind of like that. What's up, brother?
What's up, man? My mic's not this good. I'm in a car. I got an iPhone 15 Pro Max mic, so we'll see how that pans out.
And the audacity you have to call into this program. Unbelievable.
So, look, I'm calling from Virginia, but I'm born and raised in Baltimore, so I'm a true Baltimore fan. I wanted to talk about – well, first I wanted to make a comment on I'm sorry, I forgot your name, the other guy, but about the Dalvin Cook piece. Like, I agree with the redundancy, but he's washed a little bit. He just 1,100 yards last season. I don't know if that's washed. Did
he? So I'd say, did he look the same to you?
No, he didn't. But it's still hard to call 1,100, almost 1,200 yards washed. Though
I mean, if you're getting 300 carries, but yeah, no, that's fair. He He didn't. He went from being that 5 yards a carry guy behind that zone running scheme. But you know what? To counter, I'll argue with myself here. Their O-line from a run blocking perspective took a huge step back. So I mean, how much of that is on Delvin versus on their O-line? Fair point. I agree.
All right, so I got my GM hat on. Like when I play Madden and stuff, I play more of the trade and how to move the perfect team scenario than actually the game, right? So what I'm looking way ahead. I know we're still in the season, but thoughts about bringing in a receiver, right? Not that our receivers are bad, but most of them are on a 1-year deal. The only ones that are under contract next year is Bateman and Zay Flowers. So what about bringing in a number 2, number 3 guy that can supplement the loss of possibly OBJ, Nelson Aguilar, who I feel they should extend, and Devin Duvernay.
Thanks for the call, MBK. Appreciate you, man. Damn, glad he said that. I kind of forgot that Zay and Rashad are the only dudes under contract as of.
We haven't talked about needing a wide receiver in a long time, so I respect that part of it for sure. What would I say to that? I have a feeling this team feels committed to OBJ. So unless he's missing time, I think they're thinking that's their group, right? And that Aguilar is your 4th. If OBJ, I don't know if there's been an injury update on when he left the game. Yes, I mean he's left almost every single game this year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because he
his
just
credit though, he comes back in, draws that DPI, throws his helmet afterwards. I mean,
he's working his ass off. I mean, the guy's playing like a dog out there.
We should probably have the Odell conversation after you finish this point.
Yeah. I would say, I don't think it's anytime you're adding a playmaker to an offense, I think it's important. I just think they're going to feel committed contractually, and almost like their hands are tied contractually to make another addition at wide receiver. A lot of fans are already talking about how they want to see Rashad Bateman more involved, given the last couple of weeks with some of the plays he's made. So, can they add a player to into that? I think that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. One, let's give Rashad his flowers for wrestling away a would-be interception for Lamar Jackson, showing that inner dog, showing that he's going in the right direction. Obviously, you want him to be more involved. You want him to be more consistent. You want him to create more separation. But I like the fact that not only from a speed standpoint, it seems like he's getting back to where he once was, but just positive things happening when Rashad's involved in the play. I think that's a good first step for him here in year 3 to try and get back involved. And I feel like he could be that missing puzzle piece that just sends this offense through the roof if he can get more involved. And then in terms of OBJ, Cole, look, yes, he's left quite a few games. The stomach contusion is what sidelined him yesterday. To his credit, he comes back into the game, draws a DPI, 1 of 3. So he is still a threat. He is still a presence that you have to take into account for opposing defenses. But to me, the OBJ conversation in terms of measuring the deal, the impact of it, the value, who won it, all of that is for another day. They got him, 1, for the Lamar Jackson influence, for that contract extension. And 2, and that's why they overpaid, right? We all can agree they overpaid. $15 million guaranteed, with potentially up to $18 million in incentives. He ain't going to hit those unless he goes nuts over the course of the next couple months. But to me, it was 1, the influence on Lamar, and 2, what are you going to do for me when the lights are on in December, January, and hopefully one day on into February? Until we see what he is in those months, I'm just not ready to measure the effectiveness of the acquisition. What say you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. And I think they're not throwing the ball at a high enough clip right now to be able, like, a lot of people are looking at like the fantasy football perspective of an OBJ. He's not making an impact there statistically, but early in the season, and I know people don't love it, but I mean, in the first 2 weeks, he drew 2 DPIs that moved the ball pretty far. He had 2 back shoulder catches in the first 2 weeks. So, I still think he can make plays. It's just not going to be probably worth the $15 million they paid him, unfortunately. So, but, I do think it matters that it was in the context of the contract negotiations. Lamar asked for OBJ. That was pretty widely reported. Did it make a huge impact in getting Lamar signed? Probably. So, that has its own value in and of itself. But I do think that, it's just the injury thing is what's killing me. And I appreciate that he's fighting back. But it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Like, we're really trying to get this offense in tune, get some of the timing issues worked out. And it's just tough when you don't have guys on the field.
I'm just not here for the whole conversation about some folks on Twitter that are calling him a diva after throwing the helmet. This guy's been anything but.
Yeah, someone just put a comment that the toxic's coming. I don't understand that. Like, he's out there blocking his ass off. He's making plays. Yep. It didn't seem like there was any negative interaction with anybody after it. I don't know. I don't get that. That I don't agree with at all.
It came after the DPI. He was draped, right? He wants his first touchdown. It's been so long since he's been in this league, well over a year, right? He's trying to get back into form. He's dealt with injuries this year as well. So it's not just people so quickly. And I've been guilty of this in the past, jumping to the whole diva label when it comes to wide receivers. But he's been anything but this year. He's been so generous with his time with these younger dudes. And he's been a team first guy, and hopefully that'll continue for him. One more guest caller before we finish up today's live stream. My guy, Antonio, you are on deck. You're coming inside the Bobby Baltimore and Road Graders joint simulcast here. Glad you're with us. What's one thing you want to talk about, and where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Rosedale.
Antonio from Rosedale, the famous 105.7 The Fan caller. My man.
I just wanted to say it was a good Ravens win.
It certainly was. You still with us?
I'll talk to you guys again soon.
All right, my man. I think he's got some Rosedale Wi-Fi connections, but that guy calls in every single day to the fan. He is the man. Just because that was a quick one, though. Let's do one more call. You cool with that?
Yes, sir.
All right, one more. Manuel, we're going to Mexico for this, baby. Buenos dias. How are you, my man?
You're on mute, brother.
Man, you're always prepared. You're muting yourself these days. What's going on down there?
Sorry, I forgot. Buenos dias to Raymond's flock. Hey, we all understand the frustrations that OBJ has, but at the end of the day, like he says, we're on a mission, and the mission is in progress. It's like, I understand his frustration of not getting that touchdown, but hey, that speaks volumes of how the league still views him. He's still a threat. For as much as he's on the wrong side of 30s, as we say, hey, he's still fast. He's still getting like the best corner of the team when he's on the field. It's not always say or bait. So, hey, maybe not this upcoming game against Seattle, but hey, what about the Bengals Thursday night? 2 touchdowns over there just to prove a point. I understand Eli Apple is in another team, but still.
Where's Eli now? Miami?
Yes, he's on Miami, and my dad got very mad at him because of that Philadelphia game.
That's awesome. Appreciate you for calling in, Manuel. You're the man down there in Mexico. Ravens flock is all over the place, and unfortunately, we can't get to all of you who are calling in today just from a timing standpoint. Cole, contrary to popular belief, does have a full-time job on the side of what he's building here at Road Graders. So go follow him on Twitter at Cole Jackson FB. What do you got coming up on the channel this week, my friend?
We got lots of film coming. That's my specialty. So I'm going to be looking at a little bit of Gus. I want to take a look at Michael Pierce. I also want to take a look at one thing. I'm going to try and put a video together with some of the analytics on this is my biggest issue with the Ravens game plan yesterday was not running out of their spread offense. They were lining up at 11. The box looked pretty empty, but they were passing and they were throwing screens instead of running it. So I want to take a closer look at that, try and understand that a little bit better, see if those opportunities were actually there. So go check out Road Graders if you guys are into that type of content. And thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well over 600 people at peak concurrent viewership, which is always great for a day after. Doing these pretty much every single week, and we try to get different voices, different guys involved, and you and Spenny have been familiar faces to the channel. So I appreciate you for your time carving it out in the middle part of your day. Again, you can go find Cole on Twitter at Cole Jackson FB. And just a couple housekeeping notes. Thanks to Lactose Vodka for sponsoring this episode on my side of things. Roquan Smith, Inside the Vault. The next edition is coming up within the next hour or so. I'm going to go start the editing process right now and have that for you as always. He was super entertaining, very insightful, and even took a quick peek ahead at the Seattle Seahawks and the Week 9 matchup that's forthcoming this weekend inside the bank here in Baltimore. So for my guy, Cole Jackson, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this day after live stream. We'll be back with you on Tuesday morning inside the vault, coming up after John Harbaugh's press conference and whatnot. You guys are the best. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk